My husband's best friend's son is getting touchy-feely with my daughter, and that wouldn't be a problem, but I think my husband is his father, so I don't know how to prevent them from going full-on Alabama. Posted by you/Psych Factor. This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years, it has bloomed into a poisonous flower that infects my entire psyche. I, 42F, am married to my husband Luke, 43M, and he has a female best friend Amy, 43F. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They do everything together and understand each other implicitly. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings. Naturally, I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about, that their bond was not romantic and had never been intimate, that Amy really was just the sister Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any insecurity I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together, and we've always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I've spent many nights on the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she has always lamented how unlucky she is in love. Luke and I started having children after we were married, and around the same time, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Haley, 14, and the twins, Adam and Jenna, 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically, Amy would find herself pregnant as well. This happened a few times and Luke and I never knew anything about the father or fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no, and she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes, they are the kindest and gentlest people. So we were able to support Amy, to get her somewhere to stay with her kids. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way, none of us did. She needed help, and we could provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that's a long story I don't want to get into because even I don't fully understand her reasoning, but it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control and that whatever came of that choice, she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it held that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why. Of course, with Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that they sometimes hang out together when I'm not there. Hey, that's fine, sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more often. After all, she was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying and, at times, sleeping over there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years, they presented themselves as buddies, like siblings. I never picked up on any vibes between them, not ever. As one might expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house, our home is decently sized, but even we don't have room for 8 kids, but we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along. Strong bonds of friendship have formed over the years, which is good, especially if I'm right and they share blood. I've been dawdling getting to the main point. Yes, I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess I cannot remember ever seeing her with a real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties, I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen. So when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had arrived just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know. But Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. On its own, the idea that he is a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could even call it noble. But it combines with a lot of other little things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits, because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom gets, the more I see Luke in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. That doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy, and, guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids or Amy's kids? Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I've hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy, but he either missed my cues or pretended to miss them. I don't want to push the idea that he's favoring her, because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I just can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. As far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother, either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world, she instantly fell in love with them. But motherhood was never really a major part of her life plan or identity. In the grand scheme of things, when we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. So, I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity, that would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. It got worse after the twins were born, but again, I dismissed it. When Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety worse. There have been nights when I wish the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be wrong. Except now, I'm very afraid, because in the last few months, we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie, my eldest. She's really blossomed over these last few years and has become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention, but Tom asking her out completely threw me. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly, she just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to. And I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them, wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up, but I don't know, she just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom has spent more and more time with Sophie. They've been alone, or with other friends, whenever they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her, and he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and have noticed his eye wandering many times. While I'm doing everything I can to nip this budding romance in the crib, I also feel somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me, she's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. Forcing them to stop spending time together would seem unreasonable and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing just that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating, doing who knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she doesn't seem to object at all. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I've always seen Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem, of course, is that if I'm right, if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years and is the father of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends, under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. But I feel powerless to stop it. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys the attention and devotion. Tom has even confronted me, asking why I'm so against this when I know him well and know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say, other than to fall back on her being too young for him. But that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, they'll pursue this with abandon, and once they're legal adults, there will be nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They seem to feel just as powerless as I do to prevent teen love. Sometimes, it genuinely feels like they've just given up, choosing to bury their heads in the sand and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Sure, they're in high school, and it's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes, something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close, this close to screaming at Luke that none of this would be happening if he hadn't cheated on me all these years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's son wants to smash our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I'm wrong, I'll be a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something unforgivable. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've built over the last several years will be gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset, even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie is eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend, and I'm terrified it will happen sooner rather than later, or worse, that it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they stay together for years? What if they marry and want to have children someday? If I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else will find out too, and it will ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I can't even bear to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent in all of this. They didn't choose where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Even though I'm not happy with Tom at the moment, a week ago, I saw him put his hand on Sophie's thigh, and I wanted to knock his teeth out. He doesn't deserve the burden of knowing that the girl he's been fantasizing about is his half-sister. It's also messed up, and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time. I thought I could live with it, but this situation with Tom and Sophie has me deeply distressed. Update 3 days later. First of all, wow, I did not expect my post to get as much traction as it did. I was half worried that someone in my family or social circle might find it, especially when someone alerted me that the post had been shared on Facebook. But, as far as I can tell, no one in my family has seen it. I want to thank all of the kind commenters who wished me well. To those who were more frustrated with my indecision, I get it, but I was dealing with an uncertain situation, and the stakes were incredibly high. I felt like no matter what choice I made, something could, and likely would, go wrong. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on various ways I could handle this, if I ever decided to act on it. To everyone who was clamoring for an update, I have one for you. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test and had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I regret that because the window to do so has essentially closed. It felt out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer, as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against it because, no matter the results, it could make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyway and just not told anyone, because I so badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. It felt wrong to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So, what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them, because I figured they would tell the other in their own words before I could properly prepare. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid out all of my suspicions and the reasons for them. I made it clear how much I loved both of them, but that a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't even list all of them in my original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past, and so have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I told them, over and over, how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I had dismissed